Hello, and welcome to engNatural. Learn English naturally. Have you ever found yourself lying awake at night, replaying a conversation from earlier in the day? Or maybe you've spent an hour staring at a blank email, trying to find the perfect words. You think and you think and you think some more until your brain feels like it's running a marathon with no finish line. If that sounds familiar, then today's episode is for you. We're diving deep into a topic that affects so many of us: overthinking. What is it, really? Why do our brains get stuck in these endless loops? And most importantly, how can we break free and find a little more peace and clarity in our daily lives? We're going to explore all of that today. And hey, if you enjoy these kinds of conversations and want to make sure you don't miss future episodes, take a quick second to hit that subscribe or follow button wherever you're listening. It really helps, and it means we can continue bringing these topics to you. All right, let's get into it. Let's talk about how to stop overthinking. So let's start with the basics. What exactly is overthinking? It sounds simple, right? Thinking too much. But it's more than that. It's not productive thinking. It's not problem solving. It's when your thinking process becomes a trap. It's the difference between planning for a presentation and spending 3 hours worrying about every single thing that could possibly go wrong during that presentation. One is constructive, the other is destructive. I remember this one time, a few years ago. It was a pretty simple situation. My boss sent me an email with some feedback on a project. It wasn't negative, just a few suggestions for changes. A normal, everyday work thing. But my brain took that simple email and turned it into a catastrophe. First, I read it about 10 times. Then I started analyzing every single word. She said the design was good, not great. What does that mean? Is she unhappy with my work? Then I started thinking, maybe I'm not the right person for this project. Maybe she's going to give the next big project to someone else. You see how it spirals? It started with a simple piece of feedback and ended with me questioning my entire career path. It's almost comical looking back, but at the moment, it felt incredibly real and very stressful. I probably spent 2 hours worrying about it, frozen, unable to even start making the simple changes she asked for. This is what we call analysis paralysis. You analyze a situation so much that you become paralyzed, unable to make a decision or take any action at all. You're stuck. It's like being a hamster on a wheel. You're running and running, using up all your energy, but you're not actually going anywhere. And the worst part? Overthinking often disguises itself as being responsible or diligent. You might tell yourself, I'm just being thorough. I'm just trying to prepare for every possibility. But there's a fine line between preparation and obsession. Preparation is about looking at likely outcomes and making a plan. Overthinking is about getting lost in a forest of unlikely what-ifs. What if I say the wrong thing? What if they don't like my idea? What if I fail? These what-if questions are a huge red flag. They're the fuel for the overthinking engine. When you hear yourself asking them over and over, that's a sign that you've crossed the line from productive thinking into that draining, circular pattern. It's not just about future worries either. Overthinking can also be about the past. This is called rumination. It's when you endlessly replay past events, conversations, or mistakes in your mind. I can't believe I said that. If only I had done this differently. This is just as unhelpful. You can't change the past. Replaying it over and over again in your head doesn't fix anything. It just makes you feel worse. It keeps you stuck in a cycle of regret and self-criticism. I had a friend who was a classic ruminator. After any social event, he would spend the next day dissecting every single conversation he had. He'd call me and say, "Do you think I sounded stupid when I told that story? Do you think Sarah was offended when I made that joke?" He was completely exhausted from it. He was robbing himself of the joy of the actual event by overanalyzing it afterward. So, to put it simply, overthinking is when your mind gets stuck on replay, either worrying about the future or regretting the past. It's unproductive, it's draining, and it stops you from living in the present moment. It's a habit, a mental pattern. And like any habit, the first step to changing it is simply recognizing when you're doing it. Just noticing it is a huge victory. Ah, there I go again. I'm on the hamster wheel. That awareness is where the power to change begins. So, we've established what overthinking is, that mental hamster wheel. But how does it actually show up in our lives? It's often through a set of sneaky, almost invisible habits. Let's pull back the curtain on some of the most common ones. One of the biggest is seeking constant reassurance. An overthinker's brain is filled with doubt. So what does it do? It looks for external validation. You might send a text to a friend, and if they don't reply in 5 minutes, you start thinking, "Are they mad at me? Did I say something wrong?" So you send another text. Or you ask your partner for the 10th time, "Are you sure you're not upset with me?" This need for reassurance is a temporary fix. It might calm you down for a moment, but it doesn't solve the underlying problem. It actually makes it worse, because you're training your brain to rely on others to feel okay, instead of learning to trust yourself. Another classic habit? Trying to read minds. Oh, this is a big one. You see a coworker with a serious expression, and your mind immediately jumps to, "It must be about me. They're upset about that report I submitted." You don't consider that maybe they just had a bad morning, or they're concentrating, or they're worried about something completely unrelated. The overthinking mind creates entire stories, entire dramas, based on zero actual evidence. It's like being a detective who only looks for clues that confirm their worst fears. This is exhausting, and it's almost always wrong. We simply cannot know what another person is thinking. Trying to guess is a recipe for anxiety. And here's a funny one that I think many of us are guilty of. I call it endless research paralysis. Let's say you want to buy a new coffee maker. A simple task, right? Well, for an overthinker, it becomes a full-time job. You spend 3 days reading hundreds of reviews. You compare 20 different models. You watch dozens of YouTube videos. You create a spreadsheet. By the end, you're so overwhelmed with information that you can't make a decision at all. Or you just buy the first one you saw 3 days ago out of sheer exhaustion. It's the illusion of making a perfect choice. The truth is, there is no perfect coffee maker. There are several good enough options. Overthinking convinces you that you must find the one single absolute best choice, or else you've failed. It turns a low-stakes decision into a high-pressure test. This pursuit of perfection is a huge driver of overthinking. It's the belief that if you just think a little longer, a little harder, you can control the outcome and avoid any possibility of mistakes, discomfort, or failure. But life isn't perfect. We will make mistakes. Things will go wrong. Trying to overthink your way to a perfect life is not only impossible, it's the surest way to miss out on the messy, imperfect, beautiful reality of it. I used to be terrible with this, especially with creative work. I'd write a paragraph, and then I'd spend an hour editing that one paragraph. I'd change a word, then change it back. I'd restructure a sentence 10 different ways. I was so afraid of it not being perfect that I ended up producing very little. I was caught in the details, missing the bigger picture. The antidote I learned was to give myself permission to be imperfect, to write a bad first draft, to make a good enough decision, to accept that I can't control everything. So, to recap these habits, we have seeking constant reassurance, trying to read minds, getting lost in endless research for simple decisions, and the crippling pursuit of perfection. Do any of these sound familiar? Recognizing these patterns in yourself isn't a reason to be critical. It's a reason to be hopeful. Because once you can see the habit, you can start to change it. You can catch yourself and say, "Oops, I'm trying to read minds again. Let's stop that." And that, my friends, is progress. Okay, so we know what overthinking is, and we can spot the habits. Now for the most important part. What do you do when you find yourself caught in that storm? How do you stop the spiral in the moment? It's not about trying to forcefully stop your thoughts. That's like trying not to think of a pink elephant. The harder you try, the more you think about it. The key is not to fight the thoughts, but to shift your focus away from them. Here are some practical, powerful strategies you can use right away. First, and this might sound simple, is to use a stop signal. When you notice your mind is racing, you can literally say "stop" out loud. Or you can have a physical action, like snapping your fingers or gently tapping your wrist. It's a small jolt to your system. It interrupts the pattern. It's like a circuit breaker that momentarily cuts the power to the overthinking machine. It won't solve the problem forever, but it gives you a crucial few seconds of space to breathe and choose a different path. The second strategy is to engage your senses. Overthinking is an activity that happens entirely in your head. So the quickest way out of your head is to get into your body and your environment. This is often called grounding. Right now, wherever you are, try this. Name 5 things you can see. Just look around and name them. I see my lamp. I see a book. I see a window. Now name 4 things you can feel. I can feel my shirt against my skin. I can feel the chair supporting my back. Then 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. This 5-4-3-2-1 technique forces your brain to focus on the present moment, on real, tangible sensations. It's very difficult to worry about a what-if future when you're busy noticing the smell of coffee in the air. A third strategy is to set a worry timer. This one might sound a little strange, but it is incredibly effective. Instead of letting your worries run your whole day, you schedule an appointment with them. You say to yourself, "Okay, I am going to allow myself to overthink this problem, but only for 10 minutes at 4 p.m. You set a timer. For those 10 minutes, you can worry, analyze, and spin in circles as much as you want. But when that timer goes off, you're done. You have to move on to something else. What this does is contain the overthinking. It teaches your brain that there is a time and place for it, but it's not all the time, everywhere. You'd be surprised how often by the time 4 p.m. rolls around, the issue doesn't seem as big anymore. Or by giving yourself full permission to worry, the worry itself loses some of its power. And here's my favorite, and perhaps the most surprising tip. Take immediate, small action. Overthinking thrives on inaction. The longer you sit and think, the bigger the problem seems. The antidote is movement, not necessarily a huge, life-changing action, just a tiny step in the right direction. If you're overthinking about cleaning the entire house, just get up and wash 1 dish. That's it, 1 dish. If you're frozen, unable to write an important email, just open a new message and write the subject line. Just the subject line. This tiny bit of forward momentum is incredibly powerful. It breaks the state of paralysis. It proves to your brain that you are not, in fact, helpless. You can do something. And often, that one small action is all you need to get the ball rolling and build momentum for the next step and the next. So, to review, use a stop signal to interrupt the pattern, use grounding techniques like the 5-4-3-2-1 method to get out of your head, set a worry timer to contain the anxiety, and most importantly, take one small, tiny action to break the paralysis. These aren't magic pills, but they are tools, and the more you practice using them, the better you'll get at calming the storm inside your mind. The in-the-moment strategies are fantastic for emergencies, for when you're already caught in the thought spiral. But the real goal, of course, is to have fewer of those emergencies in the first place. This is about building long-term resilience. It's about changing the underlying conditions in your mind that allow overthinking to grow. One of the most fundamental shifts is to practice self-compassion. So much of overthinking is driven by a harsh inner critic. We replay mistakes because we're beating ourselves up over them. We worry about the future because we're afraid we're not good enough to handle it. Overthinking is often a symptom of a lack of self-trust and self-kindness. So, how do you practice self-compassion? It starts with how you talk to yourself. When you make a mistake, instead of saying, "I'm so stupid, I can't believe I did that," try talking to yourself like you would a good friend. You'd probably say, "Hey, it's okay. Everyone makes mistakes. It was a tough situation, and you did your best." This isn't about making excuses, it's about acknowledging your own humanity. Whew, that's a tough one, but it's so important. I remember struggling for a long time to break a specific overthinking habit related to my work. I would try these strategies, and sometimes they'd work, but other times I'd fail and fall right back into the spiral. And then I would get angry at myself for overthinking. It was a vicious cycle. I'm even failing at not overthinking. The breakthrough came when I realized I needed to be kind to myself during the process. When I caught myself overthinking, instead of getting frustrated, I would say, there's that old habit. It's okay. It's just a thought pattern. Let's gently guide our attention back." That gentle approach was a game changer. It took the pressure off. Failure wasn't a catastrophe anymore. It was just part of the learning process. Another huge long-term strategy is to embrace imperfection. This is the antidote to that analysis paralysis we talked about. You have to consciously decide that done is better than perfect. You have to be willing to put something out into the world that is 80% good instead of keeping it hidden forever while you chase an impossible 100%. This requires courage. It feels vulnerable to make a decision without knowing the outcome for sure, or to submit work that you know could be slightly better. But it's also liberating. It's how you learn, how you grow, and how you actually get things done. I had to learn this the hard way. I have old projects on my computer that never saw the light of day because I was waiting for them to be perfect. What a waste! Now I try to live by the motto, take action, then adjust. Finally, build your self-trust muscle. Overthinking comes from a lack of trust in your ability to handle whatever comes your way. You try to control the future with your thoughts because you don't trust your future self to manage challenges. So, how do you build that trust? By keeping promises to yourself. Start small. If you promise yourself you'll go for a 10-minute walk, do it. If you promise yourself you'll put your phone away at 10 p.m., do it. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, no matter how small, you're sending a message to your brain, I am reliable, I am capable, I can count on me. Over time, these small acts of integrity build a powerful foundation of self-trust. When you trust yourself, you don't need to overanalyze every decision. You know that whatever happens, you'll be able to figure it out. Building resilience is a marathon, not a sprint. It's about being patient, practicing self-kindness, letting go of perfection, and slowly, day by day, building trust in your own strength and judgment. It's not about never having a worried thought again. It's about knowing that when those thoughts come, they don't have to control you. So, that's our journey through the world of overthinking today. We've looked at what it really is, that unproductive, looping pattern of thought. We have identified some of those sneaky habits, like trying to read minds or chasing perfection. Most importantly, we've armed ourselves with some real practical tools. We have our in-the-moment strategies, the stop signal, the 5-4-3-2-1 grounding technique, the worry timer, and the power of taking one small action. And we have our long-term goals, building a foundation of self-compassion, embracing imperfection, and strengthening that all-important muscle of self-trust. Whew, it's a lot, I know. But you don't have to do it all at once. The key is to start small. Overthinking is a habit, and breaking it is about building new, healthier habits, one step at a time. It's about choosing, again and again, to step off the mental hamster wheel and back into the present moment. Thank you so much for joining me today on engNatural, Learn English Naturally. I truly hope this conversation has given you some clarity and some actionable ideas. And now I have a question for you to think about. What is one small, simple action you can take today to interrupt an overthinking pattern? It could be as simple as taking 5 deep breaths or deciding to make a small decision in under a minute. Think about it. Take care, be kind to your mind, and I'll talk to you in the next episode.